I want to learn more about Burn Manhatten, and I've listened to some of the podcasts recently. But whose brainchild was it?
Todd.
So
Todd.
I was living with Kevin and Renee at the time in our railroad apartment in
Hell's Kitchen.
We were in Hell's Kitchen, yeah, and literally was like, well, I'm in New York, and we are now officially the surviving members of Burn Manhatten. But John Teese, who recently passed, he was also just moved from Chicago, and he and I were talking, and Kevin and I were talking, and we're like, well, we're here, and we're addicts when it comes to improvisation. We're always going to try and figure out how to do it, and we were just figuring out what we want to do, and oddly, it started in the negatives. We knew what we didn't want to do. We didn't want to take suggestions, and we didn't want to do short form. So at least we knew what to avoid, and I was my girlfriend, now my wife, was sitting next to me, or we were probably a futon on the floor. But I remember literally seeing the like 5 guys in suits holding torches, and then the words "Burn Manhattan" came in, and I walked into the kitchen and I said to Kevin, "Burn Manhattan." And it'll be like a slash and burn, kind of a punk rock.
And then I ran right out the door with a can of gasoline.
Yeah, you started fires.
It was a mess. And then Todd said, "No, it's the name of an improv.
It's the name of an improv show."
I kind of was like, all right, let's sort of see how this goes. And my expectations were like that what I was going to offer to you guys was like, you were going to think like, this is too weird. I don't know. We don't want to do this. And here we are, like, what, 20 some years later? It's crazy.
I want to talk a little bit about this. So the term freeform. So when I teach, I use that term freeform, and I'm pretty sure I grabbed it when I was with you guys. Where did it come from before that? Or did it start with you? That idea of freeform?
That's a good question. We didn't really decide what our form was going to be. I have been in a group in Chicago. We were called Bang Bang. We actually performed at the Hull House. It was a highlight of my improv career. Anyway, what we were calling it spontaneous theater, partially out of branding, because everyone was doing, long form improv comedy. And we had a lot of actors who maybe were afraid of the word comedy, right? Or the expectation of comedy. So we just called it spontaneous theater and allowed for moments of drama and darkness and some crazy stuff. It was a real experiment. In Chicago, you got the Second City, and you've got sort of the Steppenwolf Goodman theater. There's very serious American theater and very silly American theater. And we sort of consciously tried to blend those two things using the tools of, acting tools you would use in rehearsal from both worlds, method stuff and then Second City stuff, improv stuff. And we never really understood that you could have a form. So we never really named it. There was never a name to the shape. We were just sort of going up and starting, and then it ended at the hour when the lights went off. I don't know when we labeled it freeform or ever said freeform, and it was really then working with Shira that we sort of figured out our form, which wasn't a form, wasn't a shape. It was just a way to get from scene to scene to scene.
The minute something occurs on stage, it is part of the scene, and it is a building block to which to build from. I often refer to it as footprints in the snow. If you want to know where the scene is going, look where it's been, and then just dig into that more until it transforms. And I think we were just discovering things organically, looking for patterns, listening to each other, mirroring what the other did, and then that would give the scene shape, knowing that the scene would probably have to have a turn, because otherwise it's not done. Like there's no discovery or exploration if it stays the same throughout the whole thing.